George.
What's going on?
Dude, so WGI's over, man. We're a little bit, about a month since WGI?
I'm still recovering.
Right? I've still got videos to crank out, and just the time and to do everything. And
what a great experience, though.
Yeah. What a great season.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're about a month since the WGI season, and George and I went out there, spent, about a week out there?
Yeah, and had a really great time, obviously in the lot and stuff like that, but we got to go see United Percussion rehearse and Music City Mystique.
Yeah.
Thanks to Alex Beltran, thanks to Josh Nelson for allowing us, thanks to the performers.
Yes.
For, I always get wary because I know they're in the grind. I know what they're trying to make happen during that time, and we're always respectful of that. So like having people come out and try to put GoPros on your drums and all of that stuff can be a distraction. So we really appreciate the fact that they let us come and watch them do the real work, behind the scenes. So that was awesome.
It's very interesting to see how everyone's rehearsal process is. The differences and how they choose to run the rehearsal.
Especially when they're not a Southern California group. We're sort of used to the way Southern California groups are. And what I really love is, seeing like more East Coast groups from other parts of the country essentially do the same thing, but their way.
Yeah.
And where they're from factors into that.
Yeah.
It was really awesome.
Definitely a lot of cool techniques out there, seeing that the instructors use to keep things fresh during the ensemble rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, we are lucky today because we have someone who was part of Pulse's, not only this season's championship season, but last year's. I mean, let's face it, they ran the table for 2+ years straight, undefeated.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is somebody that, as soon as we put him on camera, the audience is going to recognize, most notably, probably, as a performer with RCC for a number of years, March Vanguard as well, and a bunch of other places that we'll get into.
Not only that, he is now the percussion caption head of the Phantom Regiment Drum and Bugle Corps.
Absolutely. Really, really huge opportunity, and that's what we're here to talk about. So let's go ahead and welcome Jesus Sanchez. Everybody knows him as Cheese. Welcome to the shop.
Yeah. Welcome.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, welcome. So you're a Southern California guy, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So where did you grow up here in Southern California?
Grew up in Montebello, California, out in East LA.
Did you go to like Schurr High School or?
That's exactly where I went to.
Okay. All right. Yeah, go Spartans,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's cool. When did you start like doing the drumming and getting involved in all this?
So I started middle school percussion, did that. That was just kind of like a class. I just kind of did that, did the bands there. Then I went to high school and I showed up to like first day of band camp, and then that's when it started.
Okay.
Who was teaching there at the time?
Edgar Sanchez.
Mm-hmm.
No relation, but him and Leif Davidson. Those were the two guys.
Was Leonard Narumi still the band director there?
Yeah, him and Tony. I don't know when.
Tony Castro, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I know Tony very well. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were both there. So right away, there's like a lot of kind of drum corps exposure. Like my first day, I walk in. I'm like 14. I don't know anything. There's like at lunch, they're playing, I think, Cavies 2002. This would have been the fall or the summer of 2004.
Mm-hmm.
So like that was on the TV, and I was like, this is super cool. I got to do this. What is this?
Yeah.
So that was like day one. I was like 14 years old.
That's cool. Did you start like on snare, or what did you start off?
I played cymbals. We didn't have middle school drumline. There's no Townsend over there in Montebello. You know, there's none of those like feeder groups. So I had some experience, but it was just not enough to be in the snare line right away.
Yeah.
So I went in. I showed up first day of band camp, so they already had auditions. Plus, I'm not very very good at bass drum. Not a lot of people know this, but that's like the one thing I'm not good at. But
is it the timing or is it the technique?
I don't know.
Or what is it?
I mean, it's been like 15 years since I've tried it.
Like as a concept?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm better at it now. But what I'm trying to say is I started off on the cymbal line. That's where I should have been, like just fresh, gets me in the group, gets me going, just like not easy to pick up, but like, I did it, So I did that in high school, and then right away, I would say a couple of the seniors were gonna audition for drum corps, and they were like, "Hey, we're going. Do you want to go?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll go."
So at this point, was drum corps just the thing that you saw on video? Had you ever been to a drum corps show at this point at all?
At this point, it's just what I'd seen on video.
Literally, okay.
And then I was on. So this happened like first day of band camp. At some point, I was on the internet, probably just looking up videos, however I could. And back in that day, you have to download QuickTime Player and watch the Vic Firth videos.
Like LimeWire or something like that. Yeah.
Shout out Vic Firth.
Vic Firth in the lot. Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess I watched all of those. And then, like I said, a couple of the seniors were like, "Hey, we're going to go audition for Impulse from a Bucor. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll go." So I went, auditioned for the cymbal line. Didn't make it. Makes sense. I'm my first year, no exposure. I'm like, okay, just a kid. But I still wanted to do it. Caleb Rothy was generous enough to offer me a position to do rack. So I was actually in the pit my first year.
Okay,
that's cool.
What year was that? 2005.
2005. So this is the next summer. So 2005. And you said, like, had I ever been to a drum corps show? My first drum corps show was in it. You know, so that was kind of interesting. But that's kind of how it was too with indoor drumline. I did see RCC live that first year. Again, the seniors were like, "Hey, we're going to go to the show." I think it was SCPA Finals. So we went to that. So RCC was the first, like, kind of, like, major league drumline that I saw live in person. And then that summer, I was marching with Impulse. Blue Devils were in Europe, but Vanguard was still here. And that was the first, like, big drum corps drumline that I saw.
Live.
Yeah.
Live. So 05 or 04 Vanguard?
5.
Oh, okay. So match grip Vanguard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 05 years were like my introduction. When I saw it live, when I first saw it, even on video, I just kind of dove into it that first year.
As a first year performer, what was that like for you? Your first show, that first show.
I mean, I was a first year fan more than a performer. I was loving it.
Yeah.
I was just having fun.
Can you remember how your brain made sense of it? Because now obviously we have different eyes, and we're all still fans. But back then, it can be very easily overwhelming. It can seem almost like superhuman or magic or like whatever. Like, how are they doing that? Can you remember what your brain, or were you just like, man, this is amazing?
Kind of like that. Just kind of like, because I was still learning. I knew I wanted to be a snare drummer right away. So I was still learning all my stuff. I didn't have the chops. But like one memory that I'll always have, when I went to go watch RCC in 05, they were in snare subs. They were just playing like 5/4 chug or something, Chucky. And Fernando Miller's like calling out all these rudiments that I couldn't play yet, and they were playing it. And of course, I'm like starstruck, at that stuff. And it's still impressive to this day that you could just call stuff out and just do it. But part of that is like, yeah, I was young, but also it is cool, I still like it.
So you were set on like, I got to play snare.
I got to play snare, yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
So then, not a full tour with Impulse.
It was like the last 3 weeks we go out on the road or something like that.
Right. And then you come back. When did you play snare the next year, or what, like how did you transition into that?
It took a while to play snare drum. So I did. I guess that second year of high school. I'm trying to remember, man. This is so long ago. My sophomore year.
This is so long ago.
My sophomore year, there was 4 snares the year before. 3 of them all came back, and they're all seniors. And so I would have been a sophomore, and I was like, okay, difference in like technical facility there. So it's like I didn't make the snare line that year. And
were any of those guys though helping you out? Like was there any sort of?
Yeah, everybody was helping. We were always drumming. I mean, I guess one thing out of high school, I was just always drumming after school, And there was like a crew of us. There was like 3 of us that were just like, we would just do it. It wasn't like.
Would the instructor sit there and like give you some stuff to work on, or was it just stuff that you would like hear or see on video and try to emulate?
I don't know. I just played. It's kind of unsatisfying in that answer, but I just played. Now I'd be like, okay, I like what that person's doing. What does it sound like? And I'm very like trying to reverse engineer things now. But
There's something to be said though for that, for like the foundation is you're just drumming because you like drumming, and nowadays we can think about practicing efficiently and like working on skill sets and doing all of that stuff. But there's a lot of value in just establishing that you always want to drum. Nobody has to tell you to drum, So, and then having people around you that can just show you stuff, that's a really great way to start out, absolutely.
What was the show that hooked you? Was it that Cavaliers show that you saw, or
that
it was like, what was your favorite show that you just kept playing over and over again?
Oh man, there's like a whole list,
Well, we got some time, man. Let's hear some of them.
You're talking about the LimeWire. I used to download like shows, like the videos at Vanguard 99, 89, Cavaliers 2002, 2004. What else? 03 Vanguard, 01 Vanguard. I used to watch a lot.
Were you able to pick up what they were playing, play along with them at all?
Not even a little bit.
No, so it was literally just watching.
I just liked it. I mean, I knew that they were playing roles and stuff, but I mean,
you didn't try to play some of the licks along with the shows,
or I don't know. Was there even a way, like, how did people, like, was Snare Science around back then? Like, how did people even
not yet
pick up transcriptions and things like that?
I mean, you probably had to do it yourself, but I mean,
yeah,
I used to be able to kind of like Phantom 96, big shout out. I used to watch that one all the time.
Yeah.
All of these, if you put them on, I could like sing along the drum parts probably.
Yeah.
They're just like in my brain.
And see, that's what I'm talking about. Like for us, it was like we would hear stuff like, for me, like 83 Blue Devils, I'd sit there and try to play Paradox along, even though not the right parts or anything, but in my mind, it's like I'm playing along with the line,
Yeah.
But for you, video, essentially online, early days of online, for us, it was all audio.
Audio, yeah.
Yeah, the tapes or whatever.
But
Right?
but very similar thing where we would just wear that stuff out and we could sing along to the parts, like all of them, and just because they were just burned into our brains because we loved it so much.
Did you ever get to the point where you could what the crowd was going to say and you could say exactly what?
Oh,
what
probably. Yeah.
The or yeah.
Like somebody getting caught on the mics, like during the ballad or something.
1986 champions, there's stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's all the little stuff. Yeah, that's cool.
So when did you finally break through and got on snare and played it for real?
Or any battery player.
Yeah. My sophomore year, the indoor season, I played quads.
Oh, let's go.
So I was drumming, so I did that. Junior year, I got moved to snare. Junior and senior year, I did snare drum. And then around that time, so second year at Impulse, I actually did make the cymbal line. Okay. So I did that in 2006. That's actually where I met Nick RC. So we marched back then together. I did that.
And that was pre-Nico teaching there, right?
That was the year right before, yeah.
Right before Nico taught there. Got it.
So I did that. Took the summer off in 2007. And then the funny thing about taking a summer off, I don't remember anything about that summer. It's so weird. That's the one summer I don't know anything, like what happened. The other ones, I mean, the older summers that I marched, they're kind of blur, and they're like, I think that happened, but the one that I didn't march is the least memorable one. So I don't know if that, like...
Do you remember if you had, like, man, I should have marched, I should have been somewhere?
Maybe. I mean, I'm sure I did. The only thing I did that summer, I went to, like, Warped Tour. That's another thing that shows I'm getting old. That thing doesn't even exist anymore, But, yeah, I mean... And then the next summer I went and I marched. So...
And in those early years... Because I think a lot of people would be familiar with what you looked and sounded like later in your career, hands-wise. Early on, what were you like as a snare drummer? What did you struggle with? What were your strengths? And all your teachers and stuff like that, both at Impulse and at school, what do you feel like they really emphasized with you, if anything?
Well, it's strange. It's weird to look back on it, but I would say some of my weaknesses when I was younger. So everything we've talked about so far, I'm still in high school, right?
Yeah.
So my weaknesses, technical facility, just like my technique in terms of like which muscle groups are working, right? It's kind of nuts and bolts stuff. I was very like, to this day, I'm pretty aware. I kind of used mostly like finger to motivate the stick.
Sure.
You know, now it's like, okay, I need to use my wrist so it gets a different sound, a little more sound out of the drum, and then it's a little more reliable, especially when I'm running around.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also use a lot of arm, like things like that, where it's just like, okay, these things, you got to iron these out. Marching.
Was that because you were in survival mode and you were just doing whatever was necessary to get the notes out? Was it what they were teaching you?
I think it's a little bit what I was being taught.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember being told like to utilize the back fingers and stuff like that. I mean, every group has its own preferences, you know?
And every era
Exactly.
as well.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
But, you know, some of the things that may have held me back, like say that finger control stuff or whatever, I mean, it's the stuff that makes me sound good now. So it's give and take, you know?
Exactly.
But you're talking about some of the strengths I had when I was younger. I would say probably something about my listening skills when I was younger. I didn't know exactly what the strategies were, but I had the sound in my head, probably because I just pumped hours and hours of drumline in my ears.
Yeah,
You
there's
know?
something to that.
Because I've had professors talk about, you know, Bob Minster, he's a famous sax player. He used to play in the Buddy Rich Big Band, all these big bands. He told me when he started writing big band music, the sound was just in his head, just from being in it for so long. So listening is like a big part in like these other idioms, which I'm sure we'll get to in a second. But I think that helped me a little bit, because with a little bit of ear training and a little bit of guidance, like I was able to just kind of like fit in the sound sometimes and just like, okay. And I didn't really know what was going on, but in the sense of like, I couldn't explain to you at that time how I'm playing together, right? Now I can tell you, but you know. So those are some of the strengths. And then I guess the other strength was that I just kept doing it. Even when people told me like, hey, you're not quite ready, I was like, all right, I'll come back. Mm-hmm. You know? So that's just what I did.
That's great. That's again, a really nice, solid foundation upon which you can, because it's not like you were going about it the wrong way or being taught the wrong things. But it wasn't complete. Like if you look back on it now with the eyes that you have and all of the education that you've gotten and all the experience that you've gotten, now everything is much more complete. But you can see how the little bits and pieces of the way you went about it were, you know, part of this picture that ended up filling itself out, and you know, as you gained more experience.
Yeah. So you took 2007 off. You come back 2008. Did you go back to Impulse or did you go somewhere else?
Yeah, I went back to Impulse. I actually played quads that summer. So I did that. Kind of the same thing, short tour. Did that. It was pretty fun. I met a couple pretty cool friends there that I'm still really close with to this day. I mean, even 2006, all those years, 2005, all that stuff. So I did that, and then I came back. I graduated high school, and my friends that were in the line at Impulse in 08, we come back, and like literally the next week is RCC fall auditions. And my friend Phil Camacho, he was like, hey, we're going. You want to come? I was like, yeah, I'll go. So I go. Of course, I'm auditioning on snare drum because that's what I want to do, right? I make the snare line at the fall. I'm like, oh, sweet. This is awesome. We're doing the fall. And I remember like those 3 weeks just soaking up all the information from these guys. It was like Pete Sappin and Fernando, Sean Vega, Jared Andrews, all these guys. They would come in on their own days, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. One guy would come in on one day. And then, so they would be their day, and I'd just be like soaking it all up. And then the other members, they would give me tips about like how to like build up some chops. And I just did that for like 3 weeks. Fast forward 3 weeks. It's RCC winter auditions, and I'm like, I'm just going to try it, see what it's like. But I mean, I went for it, but it's like, I mean, I didn't have my, I don't know. I wasn't in it thinking like, oh yeah, I'm a shoo-in. I'm going to do this, you know? But I was like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to try, and I'm just going to do it, you know? And I did it, and I made it to a callback, and then that callback, all those guys will tell you, the whole 9 line, they kind of put us through the ringer, but me especially, because I was young. I was still 17 at that point. I was going to be 18 in the season. They did this thing where like they would have us play in these little groups, these little pods. They'd call like 3 names, like oh, blah, blah, blah. Come up. and then it became twos, and it'd be me and somebody else, and I'd go outside and be like, all right, let's see, again, me and then somebody else come back. Okay, now you, but I went in that room like 5 times, just back and forth, and I was just like, I'm just gonna keep playing, and then finally the story that I hear, I mean, you guys, you're gonna have to ask Sean Vega or like somebody who was in the room making the decision, but the story that I heard was finally they were just at a point, they were like, oh, let's see Cheese again, and they're like, no. You've heard him like 8 times. He's done it. He's come out on top every time. Just take him, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So then that's when I finally broke through.
Were you pretty shocked when you found out that you made the line?
Well, at that point I was like, I don't know. It was like Game 7 mode.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I definitely was. It was a huge accomplishment, and I recognized that right then and there.
Do you? It's interesting because something you've said a couple of times is you were just willing to just go and try it and do it and go for it, right? Versus maybe overthinking it and trying to handicap your chances or anything like that. It was more just like, I'm just going to go and I'm going to go for it. Do you think that helped you that first year? Like, because maybe if you would have known a little bit more, that would have impacted. Maybe you would have gotten in your own head about it. Or are you not even the kind of person to get in your own head about that kind of stuff?
I definitely get in my own head. I don't know. I don't know if I would have had more like insider information about that year, if they would have worked for me or against me. I have no idea. But I did know like how many vets were there, like how many people had aged out, how many spots there were. And I knew, I was like, well, I'm just going to go. I mean, I don't know. It worked out.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. At 17 years old. Heck yeah.
And I turned 18. I was 18.
Oh, well, yeah.
And also, because I obviously know Sean, like I marched with Sean and I've taught with some of those guys. And they would always tell me like, Blue Devil, and because a lot of them would teach at Blue Devils as well, like Blue Devil and RCC auditions, it's this game of finding out about these people that you have limited information about. And it's a little bit of what they were trying to do with you. I'm sure that they were making they were taking all of it into account. They were taking all of their experience with you in the fall into account, right? Because that's when you learn how does somebody respond to feedback, right? What kind of person are they, in the group dynamic? All of those things are things they need to know that sometimes it's very difficult to learn during like one audition weekend.
Yeah.
But then you have to go and do it. And we've heard from a number of people, like even Nick and stuff like that. That was a hard year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you all of a sudden, had to jump in and just be, okay. So what was that like, now that you've made it? And was the line like pretty heavy, like with vets, and like, were there a lot of new people? Like what was a
lot of new people. I will say, getting thrown into it, the ignorance helped in the sense where I was just like, well, this is just what it is. So I have to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
There was no like, man, this is really hard. It's like, well, yeah, it's supposed to be hard because it's my first time at this top level. That's just what it is. That was my perception at the time. Looking back now, it's like, man, we shouldn't, I mean, it was cool, but like, don't need to be running around 220, 6 to 5 for 3 minutes, playing triplet rolls. That's pretty crazy.
Was there anything technique wise that all of a sudden you were like, got to adjust this? This is going to be, or by that point, were your facilities a little bit better?
Did you work all that stuff out in the fall?
It mostly got worked out in the fall, at least to a level where I could, work it out in the winter, where it'd be worked out.
There wasn't like a huge albatross hanging over your head that you were like, man, I got to fix this.
No, okay, not too much. I mean, I still continued to progress my technique over the years, but at that point I was like, okay, when you get to like world class or really any sort of group you have, there's a standard, there's like a level. It's like, okay, the group needs to be above this set standard, whatever that is. You're at a place like RCC or, a Pulse or something like that. It just happens to be up here. And you just ask yourself the question, like, is this person here or here? And that just means, can they do it or can they not? you know? So technique is a factor, but it's also like, it's kind of a means to an end, you know?